Hello, Earth people, New York and California. I am back with you with what may be the last episode of this series. I have a few more ideas planned. I'm not sure if I'm going to spin them off into a separate thing. So there will be a bunch more Blender and Bippy content coming, but this may be the last of the introduction to Bippy and the kind of introductory concepts, the beginner stuff. So last episode, I teased you that we were going to get out of Blender, and indeed that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about a reason why, and then I'll give you a little asterisk around a bunch of the stuff that I'm going to be showing you this episode. When you're scripting in Blender, it's really handy for figuring out functions, for getting, your stuff together, for maybe putting a class together. But when you start getting deeper into Python, you'll find that the Pythonic way to do things is you want to separate things into multiple different files. So you basically want to have a different text file, and this will be an example. These aren't hard and fast rules. You might want to have a different text file for your operators, a different text file for your panels, and maybe then a separate text file and initial file, which reminds me there's actually a handful of Python things that we're going to do a little catch up on too. So in order to arrange things the best possible way, you might want to have multiple different files, multiple different folders even in your add-on. And that is where this kind of falls down a bit. You certainly can work with multi-file add-ons, like it's not impossible to do, but I find it's just kind of a bit of a pain in the butt. And you will also see we've been kind of flying blind in this scripting view. There are a whole ton of different extensions and different tools that can help you when you're scripting that we just haven't been using. And when we go into a quote unquote proper, editor, proper development environment, then you're going to see that, that there's a slightly easier way to do some things. But basically, this is not the ideal place to work on complex stuff or bigger stuff. So where do we go? We are going to go into an external editor. And I think before we get to that external editor, we will probably play a little bit of Python Catchup. So let's just do that right in here, because there's a few things that I realized, I had trouble with this, understanding this at first. I didn't explain it in the Python episode, so I'm just going to briefly go over it now. So this first one, I didn't really think was a big deal, but I just realized starting in, I think it's Blender 3.2, Python is now going to be a lot more strict about stuff like this. We've used a lot of things called strings, and maybe I haven't explicitly said what a string is, but a string is a string of characters, or it's text, basically. So anytime you see those quotes, anytime you see these quotes, what we're actually using is something called a string. So in here we can say ghost, and that is a string. That's literally the text ghost. We can also use numbers in a couple of different ways. We have something called an integer, and that is going to be a whole number, like 1, 2, 3, 4, as opposed to something called a float, which is a point number. So like 1.0, 2.5, 4 point, a whole bunch of stuff. So an integer can only be a whole number, and a float must have a decimal. So the way that Python worked prior to the last couple of Blender versions, and everything is changing, everything's getting updated, everything's moving all the time, so you just kind of have to keep up with the small little tweaks. What used to happen is if something required a float, say, and you gave it an integer, it would just automatically go, oh, well, I can tell these are both numbers, and you know what, I need it to be 1, and it's 1.0, so you know what, that'll work, that's fine. And it would just convert the float into the integer if the function needed an integer. If the function needed an integer. So that no longer happens. There is no longer type conversion. So what you will find is there may be times that your script should work, quote unquote, but you're getting this type error. And there's a couple of really easy ways to fix that. So let's say you need something to be a string and it's not. You have this variable called gorg, and it's equal to blorg. And you need to get that blorg as a string, but you can see blorg, it doesn't have the quotes around it. It's not a string. So what you can do is say stir gorg, and that will convert the variable gorg into a string. And the variable gorg is equal to blorg, so it'll make that into a string. Same goes for if you have a float and you want to convert it into an integer. You can just say int, and then, well, let's say, float. Float is equal to 5 point blah. Then you can just say, oh no, wait, that's a terrible example. All right, it's 5.0. Now you can say int, convert that float to an integer, and then that script will work. So that was something that I just kind of skipped over. I didn't really explicitly talk about types. There's more types than this, but that's a basic example of what a type is, how to convert between different types. So if you get a type error, chances are you're passing in the wrong kind of information. And sometimes it's as simple as, you wrote something 1.0, or you just, you wrote something as 1, and you need it to be the other way around. So you can check out, a bunch of Python resources if you want to see more about types and more about type conversion. Okay, another thing that I kind of glossed over was how to actually access an item in a list. So, we'll create a list. List is equal to square brackets, and the list is number, letter, animal, and person. Okay, so how do we actually get this stuff out of the list? So what we want to do is, we kind of saw this in the last one when we were accessing the node sockets. So we're going to be accessing the index of the list. So which item do we want? Do we want the first, second, third, or fourth? Because remember, the computer is going to see that as 0, 1, 2, and 3. So let's see what happens when we put in 0. We get number back. What about 1? Letter. And so the other way that you can access this is by slices. And the way that works is you're going to basically say, divide it at a certain point and give me what's left. So we've sliced the list and we got the first 2 items. This time we've sliced the list and we got the last 2 items. So that's a couple of ways of accessing list items. Let's do the same for dict. And I think, we kind of did this before, but I just want to make sure this is nice and clear for everybody. So we'll do just like that BL info. So name, we'll say is fun. Author is goodness. And label is why not? Okay. And then the way that we access the items in this dict is we use the square braces and then we put in the key that we want. So we put in name, we got fun. So let's put in author. And back we get goodness. So yeah, it's just a little quirk, I guess, of the dicts. When you're creating them, you're going to use curly braces. When you're calling them, you're going to use the square braces. So a list, you create it with square brackets, and you call it with square brackets. A dict, you create it with curly brackets, curly braces, and you call it with the square brackets. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about will actually possibly be better explained by just moving on to the next subject. So if you have used any Blender add-ons at all, you've probably stumbled across a site called Github. and let's go there. Okay, so I am signed into my GitHub, so you probably won't see this feed when you first get to GitHub. But basically, GitHub is a place where you can view the Blender source code. You can view the source code of a lot of different add-ons, and it's a place where you can interact with other developers of open source software. You can sign up for an account free. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff about GitHub, but we're not quite at the stage where we're going to dive into that, because I still want to get through that one last thing. So we'll just go to a repository of mine. So we go to this add-on of mine. It's called Ghibli Generator. And what we're looking at is this down here, because you will see this in a lot of different add-ons. And it's another thing that you might be looking at as a new, Python developer, and kind of going like, what the heck is this? Why do we have these like underscores and then this thing called init? And basically what the init under.py file does is there's this thing in Python that says, okay, you know what? You want me to look in this folder, you want me to look in this file, you want me to do whatever. The first thing I'm going to look for is there a file called init? So Python knows, when you're installing an add-on, when you're doing whatever, the first place it's going to look for is this init file. So if there's something you need to, do, you need to install, you need to whatever, it's going to find this init file, it's going to work. If you have a single file add-on, so like let's say we have that, actually let's go to that repository. Okay, tune up. So we have this add-on that we just created in that last episode, TuneUp. It's called tuneup.py. If we download this, and yeah, maybe we should download it. Yeah, so let's say you're a newer developer, you don't really know how this whole thing works. Someone says, oh, you can click the code button and download. So you download a zip, and it's completed. Let's go check out our Blender first, and because I think it may still be installed. So what we want to do is, oh no, it's not installed. Okay, perfect. So we are going to install that add-on. So edit preferences, and we're going to go to install. Going to go to our downloads, and we're going to find that, what did I say it was called? TuneUp. And we're going to install the add-on, and hey, wait a minute. It didn't, where'd it go? I don't see it in there. I didn't see an error message, but it usually pops up with a little check mark next to it. So let's search for it. Tune, not there. So what's going on? We downloaded it from GitHub and everything. So the problem here is what I was just saying about that init file. So this add-on absolutely works. If you download the zip file, unzip it, and then install this file here, the tuneup.py. So, someone who may not know that they need to do that might just think, hey, your add-on sucks, it's broken, it doesn't work. So if you want your add-on to work through this code download zip button, and they can just, navigate to their downloads folder, hit install add-on, what you want to do is you want to name your file init. Like I said, it's the one that Python knows. It has to go to that one first and say, okay, this is the first thing I need to do. This is how I organize all this. So yeah, we'll bust in here for a second, and then we'll kind of get back to what GitHub is and how to use it. So in it here, you can see I've got my BL info, and then I'm importing Bippy, and then we've got all of this other stuff. Actually, you know what? This is a perfect time to talk about, since we're still on that bridge between Python things I didn't tell you and how to use GitHub. So we've got from.backgrounds import star. This, by the way, is a big no-no. You shouldn't do this. This is an add-on in process, so I didn't want to make excuses for myself in a video, but then I did, and we just moved on. So do as I say, not as I do. So what is this saying? It's saying from .backgrounds import everything, basically, because star just means everything. So what's dot backgrounds? Let's keep moving on, and we'll kind of move through this. From dot effects dot action planes, import everything. Okay, and more dot effects. From dot ground planes, import blah, blah, blah. From dot objects, import blah, blah, blah. So what is this dot everything? Dot everything. These are called relative imports. So if I wanted to import like a picture that I had just downloaded, I would have to put in my script. You have to go to my whatever drive, you have to go to my user folder, you have to go to my downloads folder, and then you have to find this file called whatever.jpg and import that file, and then you can start using it in your script. That would be an example of an absolute import. So that's saying go to this exact location on this computer and grab the stuff there. Python has this neat system called relative imports, where you can basically say, I don't know where the user is going to install this. I don't know, what drive it's going to be on. I don't know this, I don't know that, but I don't need to, because I'm just going to say, look in the folder that this file is in. So this init file, dot is saying, look in this folder. And then I'm saying from dot backgrounds, so dot backgrounds, there it is. Backgrounds is in the same folder as init. I'm saying from dot effects, so dot effects. So the init, the root directory, I guess, that the init lives in, dot effects is the folder named effects in there. And you can see it's dot effects dot action plane. So if we open up effects, there you can see action planes. So that's a relative import, and that's how you organize things in that Pythonic way that I was talking about last time, where you try to split things up into different files so that it gets a little bit easier to read. And yeah, I don't think there's anything else that we really need to know about that. So actually, I kind of left that one halfway done. Let's go back to the downloads folder and tune up main. So let's extract this to here. And let's see if we can get this working. So I just unzipped the file. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in Blender. I'm going to reopen Blender, I guess, and drag it over. And I'm going to say edit preferences, add-ons, install, downloads, and why do I forget what this thing is called? Tune-up. So now I'm going to click on the .py file rather than on the .zip file and click install add-on. And boom. Now it's looking like it works. I click on it to enable it. Let's see what happens. Tune-up. Let's see if it works. And it does. So if someone recommends an add-on, if someone suggests a script, you try to install it, you download it through that code button, it doesn't work. That's one way that you can try at least to get it working. So it's possible that it's just not compatible, but yeah, that's one thing you can try to whip it into shape. Okay, so what else is GitHub? Why do we like it? Why do we care? So most people using GitHub, I feel like, are not going to be using it the way I'm about to show you. This is sort of the, the beginner, the get your feet wet kind of way that you can use GitHub. I think most people are, setting up their development environment, they're setting up their local folders, and they're, using the command line just to back up or pull down anything, I should say push or pull, any changes that they want, any repos that they, need to create. I'm going to show you, like I said, the noob, you just clicked on a link because somebody said, hey, this thing does what you want it to do, and you ended up on this site and you're going, oh, well, it looks kind of complicated. What is this? So this is a way to use GitHub. So you know what, let's go back to that tune-up repository. So I'm going to click here, and yeah. So if this is your, your first thing, let's say you wanted to, you make your own copy of this. You can, if you were following along in the last one, maybe you wrote your own script, you got it stored on your computer. What you can do is you can, sign up for your account, get going, and then there's this little plus button up here. You can click New Repository. Then that will let you create your own. So my first, oops, nah, I don't think you want spaces. My first add-on or whatever, which I'm not going to create because I don't want to create a new one. And then you can put a description there. I guess you can't. I thought you could only do private if you had a paid account, but I guess you can do private, which is cool. You can add a README file. I would recommend you do this, and we'll go through briefly how the README files work. Git ignore is probably something you don't need to worry about for right now. Licenses, again, you don't really need to worry about it. Blender is licensed under the GPL3 license. Everything that I have uploaded to GitHub is licensed, I believe, under GPL or MIT or Apache, possibly. But basically, these are just really open licenses. MIT means that anyone can download your code and do whatever they want with it. So if they wanted to download it and, say, I made this and resell it, then I think they could probably do that. GPL means that it has to carry that license on through. So like Blender is GPL, which means, you can get the source of Blender, you can download it, you can do whatever you want with it, but you can't then turn around and close that source and sell it as this closed source product. Whatever you make with this license has to also be open. So licenses are a pretty big topic and not something that we really need to get into.
That's not important right now.
You can always leave your repository private, and you can choose no license if you want. So I pretty much always add a README because it's really nice for other people who want to use your projects to have some idea of how to install, how to do all that stuff. A README is a place where, let's edit it right now. So let's say you just created this repository. Let's fix our README up a little bit. So a README is written in a language called Markdown. And we're not going to, again, worry about Markdown.
That's not important right now.
It's called readme.md because it's a Markdown file. You can look up a guide for how to write Markdown. It's really, really simple. If you want to create tables, maybe you're getting into a little bit of complexity there. But aside from that, there's not a ton that it does. It just allows you to mock up these simple little pages very quickly. A single hashtag or whatever will create your title of your page. And then every other little hashtag that you add to it will create like a subheading. So I'm going to create a subheading called How to Install with just a little guide that goes over that issue that we ran into. So I'll say, if the add-on does not install, please unzip the file first and install, what did we call it? tuneup.py. And then we can say commit changes. Okay, and there we see, let's go back to that main page. Now we've got our main heading. All this stuff was in there before, but now we just added, our own little bit of documentation. And another cool thing that we can see is, and this is kind of the magic thing that makes GitHub so amazing. We can also see the whole history of our repository. So let's go back just in case you didn't see that there. So I went to this 3 commits button. And basically what this is saying is I have made changes to this repository 3 times. And I've used the word repository a bunch of times. Repository is just a spot where you are storing your files. So every different add-on that you create could be its own different repository, or you could create one repository that's, all your add-ons in one. It's kind of up to you how you want to organize it, but that is basically a repository. So it's everything that you see right here. So yeah, back to this, we've got commits. So this lets you see the state of your code at every single event. So what did I do when I first created this? I added a license and I added a README, and I added that title and that description. Then what happened next? We'll go back, add files via upload. That's when I actually added all of that code that we wrote the other day. So update README, Now you can see I added everything in green is an addition. Everything in red will be something you took away. So this is the state that it was before, and this is the state that it is after the changes. So let's look at another example. So something that I kind of left this, and I noticed this after the fact, that my color ramp stuff, I wanted it to be up here aligned with that. So why don't we just fix that directly on GitHub? GitHub is not, it's not a development environment. It's, again, we haven't got to that thing that makes developing a little easier, which will actually come next. But something like this, it's a really quick, easy change. Sometimes I find I will upload a script and then I'll look at it and go, oh, I can't believe I spelled that wrong, or I can't believe, if I indent this, then it's not going to work right. So maybe you indented something, you just need to make a quick little change. You can just go to GitHub, hit that button, and then, pop it in. Again, if you're working from the command line, if you're pushing, pulling, there are other ways to do this. But like I said, noobs, relax. I got you. You can just click on a pencil. Okay, so we'll cut that out of there. And where is my color ramp? I'll put it right under there. And like I said, that is going to mess with us, so we make sure that everything is aligned properly. And that looks fine to me. So let's just commit the changes. And whoa, no, I forgot to. Okay. Well, you know what? Let's do it one more time. Okay. So anytime you make a change, let's do this. Let's take some of these lines out. And you know what? Actually, let's put that back in. Let's put in some comments here. So creating our outline material. And then we'll do this up here too. Creating our toon shader material. So that way you've got a little bit of a reference for, where the different stuff is happening. And then we can put this down here, adding a solidify modifier. Okay, so that gives us some idea of kind of what's happening in the different blocks of code. Helps break it up a little bit and makes it a little more manageable. So the thing that I did last time, which is not a great idea, is I just committed without making any notes about what I changed. So, I said, I might upload something with a spelling mistake and then, notice and have to make a change. The opposite might also happen. I might upload something and then make a change that introduces a bug. So it's a really good idea to make a note of where and when you made these changes. So what am I going to say? Adjusted spacing, moved color ramp lines. And then, so that's going to be the title of our commit message. And then in here, this is going to be the description. So the title, they don't really want you to have it super long. So they want it to be something that's nice, kind of like a single line. This is kind of like a subject line in an email. And then this would be like the body of the email, where you kind of go into details, where you say, noticed that spacing was inconsistent in some of the functions, so I removed extraneous space, period. Also, in previous commit, I moved the color ramp lines up to be beneath the node addition line. So close enough for Yaz. Close enough for the Yaz flute. Okay, so we pop back to TuneUp. Now we can see we've got 5 commits. So we click here and check out what we got here. So just like we said, adjusted spacing, removed some extraneous space. We can see red where the spaces were removed. We can see green where things were added. We go back, we go to this update, And now we can see that's where we moved this and we put it up here. So hopefully you're seeing how, how powerful this is as like a backup tool, if nothing else. You can return to any state that your code was in. So my little rule of development thumb, and this is probably not a good idea, so take this with a pinch of salt. I like to get my code into a working state. So if it's not, if I have something that I'm trying to accomplish and I haven't accomplished it, I want to get the code to at least a state where it's not going to give me bugs or it's not going to crash the system. And then that'll kind of be like my backup for the day. And I like to back up regularly when I am working on a project, because sometimes you like to take a chance. Sometimes you don't like to take a chance, but a chance gets taken on you and, a drive crashes. Sometimes you're just starting to work on a script. You accidentally delete the wrong one. There's a million things that can happen. So any script that I'm working on that I think, this is enough that I don't want to lose this entirely. This could become an add-on. This could become something neat later on. I will usually just create a repo and upload it. And that way, every change I make, every time I make an adjustment, I can just upload it here and GitHub will be able to tell me what the differences were, where all the changes were. And worst case, comes and I totally bug it, version 0.4 works, version 0.5 absolutely fails. You can just revert to version 0.4. So there's, how you can use GitHub to back up your own code. There's way more to GitHub. We didn't get into pull requests, collaborating with other people. There are better sources for how to get the most out of GitHub. Absolutely. But I'm hoping that this is, a nice little way for a technophobe to go, you know what, that doesn't seem that bad. Or I kind of know, when I come here and I see packages and I see inside, where do I need to go? Hopefully it makes it a little bit easier for you. Okay, so drum roll, please. This is where we're going to get into the tool that I use to write my scripts. VS Code is the name of the thing that I use. This is a thing made by Microsoft. So depending on how you feel about Microsoft, depending on, I think it's available for every operating system pretty much, or at least the big three. So yeah, if you're not comfortable with Microsoft, this is an open source program, but it has, what would they say, Microsoft telemetry. Like they can tell what you're doing. They may have access to things that you don't particularly want them to have access to, depending on how you feel about privacy and, what the things are. I am not super concerned when I'm working with this, but, everything I make is free and open source. So, if somebody steals something from me, it's kind of like, yeah, well, what was I going to do anyway? There is an alternative, VSCodium, I think is what it's called. And this is basically taking the open source part of VS Code and removing all the stuff that Microsoft puts in that, kind of tracks you and whatever. So it's, I think, like a step or two behind maybe. It may not have the latest features as fast as Visual Studio Code, but I don't think there's too big a difference. And it does have, a little more of a focus on privacy. It'll tell you what, why it exists. But I use VS Code, so I'm not going to get into that. Let's, with all that said, let's get into VS Code. That's where you can download it. I'll put the link in the description. Let's pop open this program. So why do I like working in VS Code? Well, there's these things called extensions. So I'm going to go Shift-Control-X, and these are the ones that I have installed. I have a bunch that aren't particularly related to Blender, but the ones that you will probably want for Blender are Well, there's this one. There's Blender development. We are going to get into this because this one is not exactly in a totally functional state, but I believe I've got a way to get it working in Blender 3.0. So I installed that one. I can't remember if you need it. So yeah, you'll need a Python. There we go, Python, and is that it? I thought there was another Blender one. Let's search. So there's a bunch of different Blender VSCode templates. Okay, so if you search for extensions, you can find the Blender ones. It looks like the only one that I actually got was that Blender development by Jacques Lucas. So let's get rid of that. And I will just show you then one that I really like because I thought there were more. Okay, so Indent Rainbow is an extension that I really enjoy because, like we've seen before, big thing in Python is the level of indentation. So this is a nice, easy visual way to see that. So let's open a file, I guess, or let's open a folder. So like I said, it's easier to work with multi-file add-ons in something like this, and this is the reason why. So I'm opening that same, we were at that repository earlier where we started looking at effects and, dot this and dot that. So I've got this in here now, and I can basically access and open any of these subfiles, get back easily to my main file. And yeah, here we go. Here's a good example. This is the Indent Rainbow add-on. So you've got the first 4 lines, or the first 4 spaces, sorry, being yellow, the next 4 being green, the next 4 being purple, and the next 4. So let's say I don't have something perfectly aligned. Turns bright red. And then, I have something that's not properly indented. I start getting these squiggly lines. So there's a few more things that visual code will do, and you can probably see some of the colors aren't the same. It's not necessarily highlighting things the same. And some things will have extra highlights that others in Blender don't. So like you might have a distinct color for these 2 different things, whereas in Blender they might be exactly the same color. So there's little, small tweaks without going into detail into some of the more advanced options that this editor has. There's just some small things that make it easier to read, easier to see, easier to write. So this is my preferred development environment for a multi-file add-on. If I am working on, let's see, let's go back to this. So I've got this function here, generate energy ring. This would be what I would be doing in Blender. So like this whole function right here. So there's an operator down there. I probably don't need the operator. I'm probably looking at this section right here. So however many lines this is, from 6 down to 150. So that's a fairly long script, 150 lines. It's nothing to sneeze at, but it's clear and kind of concise and to the point. All this does is create this one object. So I will probably be in Blender and I'll be working on that single function. And then when I know that the function works, just like we did with the tune-up button, when I know that it works, then I will probably, copy and paste it into here, where it can live as a part of this larger add-on that already has all of this stuff set up, like the panels, the UI, and then basically I can just plunk this in and it can live alongside all the rest. So when you're first creating an add-on, it makes a lot of sense to just live in Blender, start testing those scripts, start figuring out, where in the UI you want to go. And then once you've got your kind of prototype set up, it makes sense for me anyway to then shift over to something like VS Code, where you've got some of these convenience features. All right, well, as I found out, unfortunately, during the course of making this video, I did not have that VS Code extension working. um, Good news is it works sporadically. The bad news is it works sporadically. So sometimes I was, loading up an add-on, loading up a script, and, working back and forth, getting it to refresh the add-on, seeing the changes happening live. Everything was great. Other times it would give me just error upon error. It would interpret comments as, variables and like just these weird little syntax errors. It would see this as like a line of text, or it would see that as a variable, or, this would get uncommented and not that, and just really weird random stuff. So unfortunately, a little bit above my head. Not to take anything away from VS Code though, because like I said, this is still, my preferred environment to work in. But that is a wrap on the, getting used to Bippy. I have this repo here for anyone who, repo for short for repository, here for anyone who wants to, have a refresher on how to do any of these basic things in Blender. And I hope you guys enjoyed. If you do sign up for a GitHub account, you can give me a star. You can follow me on, let's see, so it says edit profile because I'm signed in here. This will be a follow button. And you can also go to any of the repositories, click the star button, and that will keep you updated with any changes that I make to any of these that you find interesting. So I hope that was informative. I hope I also have an update on getting that VS Code extension working, because it's very handy when it's working properly. But yeah, that'll be it for now. I hope everybody learned something. And thanks very much to everyone who's watched through to this point. Thanks to everyone who's sent me a comment, who's liked, who's subscribed. It means a lot to know that this is helpful content for you guys out there. So thanks very much. I will see you in the future. Bye.